Hello, my name is John Reynolds. Welcome to Extraordinary Life Stories. On this episode, I'm talking with Tim Armoo. Tim is a trailblazing entrepreneur and the co-founder of FanBytes, a revolutionary digital marketing agency specializing in engaging Gen Z audiences. Under Tim's leadership, FanBytes became a leader in influencer marketing, working with global brands to create innovative campaigns that resonate with young audiences. His visionary approach earned him numerous accolades, including spots on the Forbes 30 Under 30 and the Evening Standard's Most Influential People in London lists. I'm really looking forward to talking with Tim, so let's get into it. Tim, thank you for joining me.
Hello, what's cracking?
Tell me, who's Tim Armoo?
Tim Armoo is a guy who was born in South London and then went to live in Ghana, and then when he came back to London realized the power of the internet, and since then he has been a child of online marketing, has always used business as his way to, I guess, self-actualize and achieve his dreams and achieve the life that he thought he was meant to have. And so far so good. He's done a lot of failures, he's had some successes, and he's here to tell the story.
Love that. And thank you for joining me to do that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of experience, there's a lot of traveling. As an education curriculum, you probably had all sorts of jumping around. How much of that helped you become the businessman and the entrepreneur that you are now?
Oh, interesting. So I think there's two ways. One is probably the micro, which was, there wasn't a particular subject. It was actually the fact that I took it upon myself to be able to learn new things. And I think around like 16, 15, I built an identity around someone who could learn new things, which therefore meant that during business or during any new challenge, I just told myself, well, I could learn this because someone else has learned it. And so that gave me that very micro view of what learning can be and the type of person I can be. And then probably on a macro, I think I was always good at school, but I think when I got to around 16, when I went to sixth form, I ended up going to this boarding school called Christ Hospital, and everyone there was just like this insane genius. Like I'm talking 14, 15, they're doing further maths, they're thinking about how they get into Oxbridge.
This is academic genius, right?
Yeah, exactly, right? They were academic geniuses. And I had come in as the smart one, but in a room full of ultra smart people, I wasn't the smart one. And so that actually gave me the impetus to then go and really explore business and entrepreneurship. Because I thought, well, these guys can be really good academically, but I bet they're not that good from an entrepreneurial perspective.
There's a disconnect, right?
Yeah.
School, you're being groomed to get a job, which funnels you into the corporate side of things.
Yeah.
Whereas you were very much the school of entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And so you had a mindset early on to try and learn things and better yourself, dare I say, outside of the education curriculum.
Yeah.
Because you've got communication skills. In fact, let's go into FanBytes in your love of the internet. You weren't being taught that at school, entrepreneur. You've been taught how to use the internet to research and to learn things, but you turned that into a business. So where did that idea come from that became an idea to put into practice?
So I'm very shameless in the fact that I just copied FanBytes. I saw an American company do it and I thought, oh, this influencer thing is interesting. We should just do that in this country and just do it for Gen Z. And if anything, I would say that the ability to not want to need a unique idea was because I backed myself enough on the execution. So I never really backed myself on coming up with new, unique ideas that can change the world. But I always thought, well, if someone has done this idea before and they're no smarter than me and I can learn what they did, then I'm just going to do what they did. And so FanBytes ended up, I remember when we eventually sold the company, I had a reporter ask me and said, did you think this is what would happen? Oh my God, how do you feel? And I think they were expecting me to say, oh my God, this is beyond my wildest dreams. But my reply was, yeah, it's exactly how I designed it. Because to me, I was like, well, people build this sort of company. This is what they do. I'm just going to do it. Oh, this is what happens. You sell your company. And so that identity, again, as being a learner and being someone who wasn't afraid to almost go from its old self of not knowing what something was to the new self is something that's always helped me in my life.
It's interesting. That moment you sold Fanbytes and you're now an exited entrepreneur, eight figures, and technically don't need to work again, depending on how you look at life.
Yeah.
That can be actually quite a lonely moment and a lack of identity for some people. They've sold their baby. And a number of people I know have got a bit lost at that point. They've lost their purpose. Because dare I say, the mission was to make a load of money, and that was what kept driving them. You achieved that very young, which I think probably is a real advantage. I'd love to know that journey you went through in the sort of the moment straight after.
Yeah.
A whole load of money hits your bank account, and then the months and up to now, and what your purpose is now.
So it's interesting because when we were going through a process of selling the company, it was about 6 months where we appointed a bank and all of that. But actually 2 years prior, when the business was at a stage about 10 million in revenue, and I remember speaking to one of my mentors who said, well, so you're at this weird stage where the business is going to be bought by someone, but you get to decide when. It's like, okay, cool. But then the next thing he said was, you should think about what you're going to do afterwards. And at that point, I was 25. So we sold the company when I was 27. And at 25, someone says, you should think about what you're going to do afterwards. I'm like, mate, forget what I'm going to do afterwards. I'm going to take out the money and lie in it. That's what I'm going to do. I didn't really care about it until when we went through the process and we sold the company. And there are a few things that happen. The first thing is that you get that high of, wow, this is amazing, right? And you have a lot of congratulations from people and everything else. And then the second thing is and it happened probably about 3 months afterwards, where I went, okay, interesting, now what? And I generally, and I think I've said this before, when I was building Fanbytes, I generally thought, build a company, by 30, be financially free, and then just die. It's like...
Because you couldn't see beyond it.
I just couldn't even see a family. I couldn't see a partner. I just thought, well, so you make the money and then, yeah, that's it now. And so the big challenge for me, and I'm still actually going through this now, is actually trying to define what is my force and function, quote unquote, my purpose. I don't know. But I do know that I get to design that purpose. So I don't actually believe that there's a predetermined purpose that people have. I think it's all designed. And in the first stage of my life, subconsciously, I designed the purpose to be just like build a company, build something impactful, and then exit it. And now I'm thinking, what is the next thing? And I still don't know it. It's been 2 and a bit years, and I still don't know it. And I'm fine with not knowing it.
It's part of the journey, right? So,
yeah.
I mean, it sounds like financial freedom was really important to you, and I can relate to that. There was a young version of me was like, just grow and scale something that you can make money from, and then you can breathe, and then you can. One of the things I feel is something you're putting out a lot that I see from socials and people I speak to about you is mentoring. You're helping people. And I want to know where that comes from. And actually, you just mentioned in the few minutes we've been talking, one of your mentors. So you obviously either had people approaching or you seeked out, if you like, mentors.
Yeah.
Is that a passion of yours? Is that something that you're giving back?
I think for me, mentorship serves 2 purposes. One of my favorite quotes, I actually heard this quote from Jay-Z, but turns out it's like an Oscar Wilde quote, but I think it was a Jay-Z quote.
Probably sounded better from Jay-Z.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Cool accent.
Yeah.
Jay-Z said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And I remember hearing that as a kid and just thinking, oh yeah, like everything I'm trying to do has been done by someone else. Even if I'm trying to build rockets, like someone else has done it. And so mentorship for me at that point then became my way of being able to shortcut and just like find how other people have done it and then go do it. And so fast forward now, if I look at my experience and my journey with Fanbytes and everything else, I see mentorship as my way of shortcutting people to the end goal. I think you can come to mentorship in 2 ways. One of the ways is actually quite an ego way, which is like, here I am, and I am, spreading my information to you minions here, right? And go do it. The other way I think is a low ego, which is I don't think I'm particularly special. And I think the thing that I've done was actually quite predictable. And I just want to show my 21-year-old self how predictable it is. Like, just do this. This is the type of business to do. This is how you hire people. Just do that. Just do that. And so having felt that from prior mentors and just like seeing how predictable and how much of a shortcut they gave me to avoid what not to do, I now want to then impart that. And in my Instagram bio, I had sharing what I wish my 21-year-old self knew. And because that is quite a big North Star for me.
Yeah, and there's a practical element to you. You've got an emotional side to you, but actually when I've seen any of your content, it's very practical in a good way.
Yeah.
It's not this whole, you could call it some of the American influences, where it's like it's sort of smoke and mirrors and so on. You just cut straight through it.
Yeah.
This is what you want to achieve. This is what I did. This is what you can do. And this is where you should get to.
Yeah.
And but you also, and this is really important, you're making it very clear it's not always easy. And it requires discipline and hard work. And I think as an entrepreneur and a founder, that message of almost Insta versus reality, that's really refreshing with you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean by that?
Yeah.
The guy with the Dubai harbour behind him and the Lamborghini, and look at me, haven't I done really well? Whereas you're actually, okay, I've had the success with Fanbytes, there's other things you'll be involved in.
Yeah.
But this is what I did. No frilly stars and so on. And is that something that you see other people starting to, not copy, but second mover advantage? You did that because I think that's losing its way with Instagram and kind of TikTok, where people are getting turned off by the kind of look at me, because the ego is too much.
And I think over time, the more stories you hear of grifters and people who are not who they say they are, the more people paint everyone with the same brush. And so when you have someone who comes in and says, and also isn't particularly flashy, right? Like, I remember actually very early on in the content game, this should tell you something about, I guess, British culture. It's so funny. Someone said, I doubt you're successful because where's your Rolls Royce? And they were like, I doubt you're successful because where's your Rolex? Where's your blah, blah, right? And I thought about it and I thought, wow, there is a whole community of people who, to them, it's Rolex equals successful, no Rolex equals not successful.
Instant judgment.
Right? And so instantly from the jump, I go, right, I'm not going to pay attention to you because you don't have a Rolex. And think about subconsciously how many 20-something-year-olds and even 30-something-year-olds who the prior years of social media has so clouded their judgment of what actually good information is that they refuse to take something which is in contrast to that, right? I mean, it kind of explains, and it's sad to say, but it kind of explains the rise of the people like Tate and those people like that, right? It's like, first frame, I am in my supercar and I have 60 women lined around me and
flashing
I'm smoking a cigar and I'm flashing my Rolex.
Instant.
And now this is why you need to pay attention to me. And it's like, well, the people with the true wealth, the people with the real wealth don't have to do that. So I am seeing that change happen, especially as you have more entrepreneurs, especially young entrepreneurs who have done well in very obvious and public ways, right? So beforehand, it was always some guy who built some business, but you can't ever search it. And it was in like some industry that you never quite understood. And now you even have people, I read recently, the founders of Represent Clothing, right? They're going to build that business to 100 million in sales. And they've built it very publicly. They've been doing the business for like 14 years. They built it very publicly and everything else. If they then say, well, here is the playbook on how to do X, Y, Z, people go, well, yeah, because you built a very public business. You built a business I understand, and I know that you actually did the work.
Which makes it authentic, which is what you exude. I think just going to yourself, actually, this kind of myth, if you like, and often talked about as a successful entrepreneur and businessman, you've got to get up at 4 a.m. and work out, meditate, read a book. Where do you sit with that? Because you clearly keep fit. I know we'd said off camera before we started filming that you haven't trained for 5 weeks, but you've got serious muscle memory. And it's clearly been an important part of your your sort of mindset, if you like. But what works for you? What do you do to keep mentally and physically fit?
I definitely make sure that I win the morning. That for me is very important. So I actually have two phones. One of my phones doesn't have anything on it apart from Audible, and that's it. And that's the phone that I use up until 10:30 every single day.
So you can listen to podcasts on that. You can do educational stuff, but no one can contact you.
No one can contact
That's
me. I
smart.
can't go on Instagram. I can't go on YouTube. I can't do anything. And often the thing that I have in the background is not a particularly educational thing. Like right now, I'm listening to a book which is about how Elon Musk took over Twitter, right? It's more of just like something in the background because I know that if it's too quiet, I will feel this compulsion to then go and check something, get some kind of dopamine rush.
To get a bit of stimulation, but without it
just like
overstimulated. Yeah.
something there. There are three main things that I do. One is definitely I aim to win the morning. The other thing that I deeply try and do, and people kind of poo-poo it, but I love it, which is just like take very short periods during the day to just have a bit of a mindfulness practice. So even on the Uber here, I thought, all right, cool. I'm going to do this. I'm very excited about it. But so far today, and we said this off camera, today has just been like a nightmare day. Just so many random bad, just frustrating things have happened. And I was in the car and I just shut my eyes, and for 5 minutes I just did a bit of a mindfulness practice, and I feel incredibly better.
What did you do? I'm interested. So is there a practice of gratitude there? Is there a self-talk where Timo is saying, come on, it's just a day. It's just look at everything else. What do you say to yourself? What are you doing then?
Yeah. So what I would do is I would observe my thoughts. That's the like overarching thing. I would observe my thoughts. So a couple of things that happened was I invested in something and it ended up just not being what I thought it was. It was basically a fraud, basically.
Sorry to hear that.
I bought a watch which I then returned, and I thought I'd get a refund for it, and it was quite an expensive watch, but turns out it had like dinged, so which means I'm not getting a refund for it. And I was like, for God's sake, all of these things. And I thought and then I also have some family issues. So then all I did there was I said, okay, these things are happening, right? I can't control the fact that they've happened, but I can control my reaction to them. And so just constantly mulling that over and being able to separate how I felt about how the things were, and finding different sentences and phrases, things like I am observing this thought, or like this is currently happening and I'm observing it happening. Separating from that made me feel a lot more in control, right? Because that feeling of angst and that feeling of overwhelm comes because you feel a lack of control. And so if you then mindfully and deliberately impose your control, then that feeling of angst then reduces. And so that was what I did. And I do that throughout the day if I feel anything. And then the third thing I would say would be, to work out. I haven't done that in a very long time, but I do try and ensure that from a mobility perspective, I feel very fluid as well.
So like getting out for a walk and getting fresh air, because I remember when we met, that was part of what you wanted to do, was you weren't going to get a cab, you were going to go and walk, and that's a deliberate being present.
Yeah.
Another thing that intrigues me is you'd be attributed to being successful if you relate that to financial success and, of course, building a business, scaling it, and then exiting successfully. Sitting here now, how would you define success?
So over time, and I'm sure this is also probably the same with you, and the same with a lot of people who are watching. When you're younger, you kind of see success through one lens, which is just mainly financial. I think over time I've come to appreciate that like success is the realization of any worthwhile pursuit. So that could be in anything. That could be success. Your worthwhile pursuit is that you want to have an amazing career in whatever you choose to do. You want to have an amazing family. You want to raise amazing kids. And the realization of that is what I deem success as. And I think there's even another word I'd add in there, which is the progressive realization of a worthy pursuit. So it's an ongoing thing that you just keep realizing every single day.
Is that purpose?
See, it's interesting, right? I have a friend, Simon, and Simon talks a lot about purpose. And he and I constantly keep going back and forth because I think there is not just one set purpose. Like you just...
So when someone says, what's your purpose?
Yeah,
It's like, oh.
I'm like, I don't know. It's just, if you ask me in 2 months, I have a different purpose. Or in 2 years, I have a different purpose. I think you can keep changing your purpose over time. And as a result of that, you can keep being successful at different things over time, right? So there was, there's business success, then there's like social success and relationship success. So you can just like keep reinventing yourself every single time to then achieve some kind of worthwhile pursuit.
I love the way you articulated that. And actually, a lot of people, and especially the way I was brought up, the opposite of success is failure. But is it? Because actually, when you introduced yourself, you said, I've had lots of failures. You didn't choose to say, I'm a successful entrepreneur and so on, which one's really humbling. Two, tells me that you, and I certainly do, associate failure with actually learning. And I dare I say, I sort of want to open that up for you, actually. Everyone will know you from fan bites and other things you do, but there will be things you have ultimately tried to do and they haven't worked. And what have you learned from them?
So on my LinkedIn profile, I have a position on there, which is Chief Failure Officer.
I didn't know this.
Yeah, Chief Failure Officer. And I have like,
Brilliant.
and I have like 6 different businesses in there. It's like, failed because of this, failed because of this, failed because of that.
So lessons learned.
Yeah, exactly. And I think
ultimately makes you a much better entrepreneur and individual, right?
Yeah, because you realize what not to do. And if you realize what not to do, then the only thing left is what to do. And then, just
narrows it down.
Yeah, so I have a very healthy attitude to failure because I just see it as narrowing the option pool so I only do the things that would get me to the end goal.
And what do you see you doing now? I mean, if there's anything you're working on now, elaborate, but it feels like you're in a gathering stage.
Yeah.
With a view to then going again, whilst potentially investing and doing other things. But do you have, sitting here now, do you have a kind of a vision, a goal that you'd like to achieve something else?
So I don't necessarily have a specific goal, like a specific project. What we did when I sold Fanbytes was I wrote down a massive list of mistakes that I made. And it's quite funny that probably about 60% of them all came down to, say, the people decisions that I made. So not so much that I chose bad people, it was more like most of my headache actually came from, I should have hired this person, I should have let this person go, I should have had this conversation, should have done all these things. Which then narrowed it down to actually, can you just create the best possible environment and collection of people? And then if you've amassed that quality of people and that community of people, then you decide what to do. Whether it's property, whether it's SaaS, whether it's e-com, whether it's taking over a restaurant. But if you have the great group of people will make things happen. So I would say right now, and on TikTok, people talk about like being in your era, right? Being your era. I think I'm currently in my people collection era, which is where I'm like networking people. I'm like doing little projects with people to see how we vibe, how we get on.
Yeah,
exactly. And then when I then see an opportunity, which gives me that same almost tingly feeling as I did with Fanbytes, I'd have spent so many years building deep relationships with people that I say, okay, they're good. Now let's go.
There's your tribe.
Exactly.
That's interesting. And so where does AI fit in this? Because I love what you just said, because people is what I live and breathe.
Yeah, so I can tell.
Very little in my world is AI. So I can finesse things with AI right now.
Yeah.
So it might be things that I just, is there anything else I could talk to Tim about before we talk today? Just put that into ChatGPT, but it's not helping me too much. Where do you sit with that? Because I agree that people are just everything, and I've had businesses and still have got business interests where the people really affect what's going on. Yeah. Are you sort of immersed in the AI space and watching what's happening and plugging that into different things you're looking at as well, or are you sort of just kind of more focused on people?
When I first really got into AI, ChatGPT, Midjourney, DALL-E, I thought, oh, this is giving me that same feeling as in 2017 when I discovered the influencer marketing thing. And I thought, ooh, there is an arbitrage here. There's the people who know and the people who don't know. And the people who know just widen the gap because they just compound their knowledge. And so that's currently how I feel with AI. I don't quite know what the application is to build business, but I am using it in a few of my companies to help us do things faster, to help us just condense what might take, 2 days into 2 minutes. And that for me is just powerful. It's just almost about staying in the game. I tell people that during Fanbytes and that whole influencer journey, we weren't the best company in the space. We probably weren't even the second best company in the space. But what we did was we were just in the game. And so as that game started to rise, that meant that us and a bunch of the other top players ended up all winning. I see the same thing with AI, which is, I don't know where it's going, but I know that we're just in the game. And if we're just in the game as that market grows, as demand for anything grows, at least when the right thing comes, we're equipped to make sure that we win.
Timing's so important, isn't it? And actually, just on the people side of things, as an exited entrepreneur, have you chosen to invest into other businesses? And it's a loaded question because when you back yourself, you know how hard you work, you know how your scruples are in place, you know that you've got a respect to, if you've taken investment from, if you ever took investment from other people, you know, there's a respect there. Yeah. Now, looking in on other people's businesses, and potentially a lot of people probably come to you for funding, how much of the opportunity is influential to you and how much of it is the people?
So I have a very complicated relationship with investing. So I have invested now in about 19 companies and I stopped. And the reason I stopped was because I realized that I was doing it from a position of ego. I was doing it from a position where, you know, I was now the one who people came to fund their dreams, and it fed my ego to say, you know, there you go, I'll give you money, you know, go and do your thing, right? But equally, I realized it was kind of gambling because I was just like putting it into companies and thinking, well, yeah, it kind of looks good now, but let's go see what they can do. So now my attitude has changed. Now I am actually taking bigger stakes, but in smaller companies where I can generally impact the enterprise value, where I can generally impact them potentially selling on. And that for me is where I get very excited, as opposed to just writing, you know, 10, 25K checks in here and then seeing what they do. That was just coming from a completely different mind space, which wasn't great.
No, it's interesting. I found that an interesting principle to hear back from you, because you're so capable. But if you're not involved in that business and you're just writing a check, you're leaving it completely up to other people. So it sounds like now you're not just putting funds behind an opportunity, but you're actually bringing your network, you're bringing your expertise, which, dare I say, gives you fulfillment as well, right? Because you're part of it. That makes sense.
Hugely.
You've been awesome to talk to. I've been looking forward to this and I've enjoyed it. I hope you have too.
Yeah, it's been good.
We've run out of time, but Tim, thank you for making time in your schedule to talk with me.
All good.
Thanks, mate.